record on this computer. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us tonight for Live Bees. Tonight I'm talking to Mick the Bee Man. And before we get into our conversation, I would like to start by acknowledging the Palawa people as the traditional and continuing custodians of Lutruwita, Tasmania. We honour their history and deep connection to this land and its waters, which were never ceded, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. As I said, we're speaking with Mick today. Mick grew up in the Netherlands, where he developed his lifelong interest in trees, studying forestry and landscape management. After completing his studies, Mick went to Ireland, where he started a forestry contracting business in Galway. And over this time, he became increasingly aware that things needed to change. Disappearing hedgerows and diminishing biodiversity on farms spurred Mick into a new career of organic vegetable and fruit farming. And that's where his interest in bees started. After completing a beekeeping program, Mick inherited 2 bee colonies following the sad passing of a friend. It soon became apparent the hives the bees were in weren't ideal for the bees to live a healthy life. Mick began exploring natural beekeeping, starting his business Boom Tree Bees. So I'd like to hand over to Mick and just welcome him once again. Thank you, Mick, all the way from Galway in Ireland. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, I'm actually moved from there. So I originally lived in Galway, but I live now all the way in the north of the country. So I live in Buncrana, County Donegal.
There you go.
Yeah.
Long way away.
Thanks very much for having me. It's absolutely great, to be able to talk to you, and hopefully I'll be able to pass on a little bit of information. What I've learned over the last 10 years, working with bees. So yeah, as you say, what my interest kind of was spurred the time I was kind of the head gardener on a organic vegetable farm. We covered about 30 acres of veg, and especially earlier on in the season, we had big issues with proper pollination. So I was looking ways to increase the yields, and obviously pollination was obviously the first one. So that's the way it kind of started all off, where I just started to increase the forage for bees, especially around the field boundaries. I would put in maybe 2-3 meters of a planting that was just for pollinators, just to attract them to the site. And probably 2-3 seasons in, we saw a good increase of yield of the crops itself, so which was fantastic. And from there on, it kind of just snowballed on. I had a friend of mine, he was a good beekeeper for probably 20 odd years. And unfortunately, he passed away, and I ended up inheriting his hives. And that's I got hooked in by that stage.
And that was the first time that you looked inside beehives?
That was the first time, yes. Yeah. So that was 2014, when I actually, was kind of looking at these 2 big, giant square boxes. One was red and one was white, and I was just kind of staring at them and said, "What do we do here?" And got myself a suit, opened it up, and what I saw inside, I said, "Great." I said, "Okay." I said, obviously not having any knowledge on it, but very quickly I could see there was signs of issues. I see lots of dampness inside, and there was mold and whatever. So obviously I closed them back up again, and I just inquired with the local beekeeping association, and there was a guy there. He was very helpful. He came out and he sorted it all out for me at the start, just to make sure. But then after me doing the course, the beekeeping course with that club, I kind of drifted away from it, because obviously from my background, I'm kind of focusing more on landscape management, conservation side, so I kind of started to drift away from it, because obviously I just saw too many issues within the hive, and I wanted a better hive for the bees and not for the beekeeper. So that's why I then started to look at different formats, came across lots of different types, but then I kind of hooked in with the whole idea with natural tree cavities and log hives, and that's where we are today. Yes, I started, when was that? 2017. I started Boom Tree Bees, and Yeah, focusing it on as much as possible the educational side, like habitat creation, the rewelding, and probably then education as well. Like obviously that's key as well. Whatever I learn, I try to pass it on to other people.
So, Mick, touching on the log hive and you getting involved in this idea of natural cavities, is that a movement in Ireland? Is it a big thing that's happening across the country, or is it something that you had worked towards yourself and come to this realization yourself?
When I started off, I was the only one
Hmm.
for sure. Yes, and I was kind of met with a lot of mixed reactions at the start. But obviously, it's with everything. Like when you're introduced something new into an area, you're going to have lots of people. And hey, don't get me wrong. There's beekeepers and people out here. Like, they're very knowledgeable, very very knowledgeable. Like on beekeeping and everything to do like with apiculture. Um, but obviously, you're introducing something new to them, and they don't have an understanding from them. And obviously, then yeah, they're going to have certain reactions, and they mightn't suit me or whatever. But I find it then more like a challenge where over time I can actually give them that information that they are seeking, and obviously, hopefully, be able to inspire them as well, like to slightly change their certain ways of their beekeeping management.
So, Mick, just while we're talking about the bees, we will talk about your university degree as well. But while we're talking about the bees that you rewild, are we talking about European honeybees as we would know them in Australia, or are they a specific kind of Irish bee? What are you doing with the bee? Which bees are you talking about
So
specifically?
it's the work. All the work that I do is with our native bees. So that's
Uh-huh.
Apis mellifera mellifera.
Mhm.
Uh, so yes, I started off a couple of years ago now, where I'm really focusing on the particular area because obviously to be able to come up with proper scientific information and data, I allocated an area where we're looking at about 120 square kilometers. This is in my local area, and what I'm doing now is I'm kind of like taking stock like of what's in that area. And these are free living colonies. These are managed colonies. Any bee nest like that I can find, I'll have it on the map. So I want to make sure that I have every single colony that's within that area, and then from there on I can start in. So our second step then is to obviously then to start look at each individual colonies and see what we've got, because it's very important obviously that you make sure like that you have information regarding the colony, like is it AMM or is it maybe Carnica or Ligustica, whatever it is. So I'm just inventorizing at the moment and take a note of that. And then hopefully now, over time, we can actually start asking particular questions and obviously continuous monitoring as well of those colonies over the next, say, decade. Um, Hopefully we'll be able to come up with some sets of information like what's going to be very interesting, like in the beekeeping world.
And how far reaching is that diameter or that plot that you're monitoring at the moment?
So it's 120 square kilometers.
Yep.
So what would it be from here? It's kind of like a big triangle wedge, and it took me a good year and a half to pick the location,
Yep.
and it's more for strategic purposes. So where I live, it's like a peninsula, almost on the top of Ireland, like, and my town, like, it is has a big giant inlet from the sea, big lock. So on one side of the piece of ground, like, I have the sea, it's covering it all, like, so I have no drifting that's able can happen like from the bottom side up into the area.
Yep.
So I've only literally one boundary where I take complete control, like where I try to catch anything that might migrate into the area. I try to trap every single one, so it's not going to be contaminating what's already there.
Wow, that's quite a monumental effort.
Yes, yeah, there's a bit of work on it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mick, can I take you back a little bit further again? When you made the decision, when you had your 2 colonies that you inherited from your friend, and you started to explore natural beekeeping and the idea of natural cavities, can you step us through what you did with that colony? Did you move those 2 colonies into a log, or have you kept those colonies in a traditional hive, or what did you do? What was the next thing that you did?
So initially, yes, I got my own mentor at the time, like, and throughout the first season, he really helped me. So I got like a crash course as part as well. Like I obviously did the conventional beekeeping course, but then with him, because he was a master beekeeper, um, he gave me like an absolute crash course, like in overall health and everything inside the hive, which was absolutely fantastic. So I assessed him, and obviously he made sure like the colony stayed healthy. But obviously at the same time, I was kind of looking at ways, right, which way do I want to go? So initially I made up a couple of, we call them here national hives, so framed hives.
Oh, yeah.
Because the hives that I inherited, they were from the early 40s. So they were very old type of hives. So I knew like obviously they're going to have a certain lifespan, and I need to at some point renew that. So I actually made up, I think it was 15, 20 hives or something like myself.
Yeah.
Just got the plans off the internet, made them. And as I was working with those, like, because obviously then throughout the following season, I went from those 2 colonies. I went to, obviously, they swarmed, and I had ended up with 4 colonies. And then my beekeeper mentor, he says to me, he's like, oh, well, there's a quick way here if you want to increase stock. And actually, one of those colonies, we split it 6 ways. We double brooded them, and then we just split it 6 ways. So I was always stuck with 10 colonies at the end of my first season. Yeah. Which was very quick. And then I noticed like that just wasn't right. The mesh floors and everything, and bees were struggling to keep everything warm. I noticed like in times of the year, like where there'd be young brood, and you see like being abandoned.
Yep.
And I'm going, like, it was right. What's going on here? Like, so that's where I then started to look at other ways. I started to make some couple of log hives. And I let in the following season, I let those bees to swarm into those logs themselves.
Yep. Yep.
So my stock, yes, those original bees, I still have them. A real nice story is as well, like, so those bees I inherited at the time was from a friend of mine. He lived, maybe 6 miles down the road. And about 2 years ago, this man, he walked onto my property here, and he started pointing a finger at me. He said, Gio, are you Mick? I said, yeah, that's right, yeah. And he started shouting at me. He said, like, and he lived about 50 meters away. Like, and as he was walking up, really old man, like in the early 90s. And he says to me, like, he said, you've got my bees. And I'm going like, oh, this might be a problem. And as I'm getting close to him, and he started explaining, and like he said, like, oh yes, way back in the early 20s and 30s, his father and himself, like they lived locally here, only maybe 200 meters down the road, in a tiny little cottage. And they said, like, oh, they kept bees. They had a couple of hives, and he was actually pointing at the 2 hives that I had, the original ones. He said, yeah, we're keeping them in those type of hives. And my father, like, he caught them out, the swarms, like, out of a wild nest from local trees. And then he goes on, like, and he says, like, yes, about 15 years ago, I said, some of those bees I passed on to this person down the parish. So it's a kind of more like a rural area. And he mentions my friend's name, like, and I'm going, like, right, okay. So he passed on the bees to him. And then eventually the bees came back. So I said, like, so the man actually went down. He actually showed me where his original house was. And from my house, it's literally 300 meters.
Oh, wow.
So it came completely full. The bees were there already naturally in hives. They were naturally in trees. They were moved into boxes. They completely went out the area and then came back again afterwards. And
They've
now they're
come
back in
back
trees.
and now they've swarmed and you've put them back into logs.
Without me knowing anything about it. Yeah, which
Yes.
was really
I
nice.
love it. I always reckon bees choose people. They choose them for a reason. I love it. Mick, So when those bees swarmed into the log, what then happened? Tell us about that. You just let them go in there. You obviously, in Ireland, you don't have the same kind of biosecurity laws that we have here because we have to have removable frames in hives. So it was okay, or okay. Tell me.
So to get back on Australia, yes, it's not true. I was
Okay.
in Australia and I had conversations with the biosecurity people. And
Okay.
as long as you only provide the habitat and you don't interfere, you're allowed to put them up.
Okay. Yep.
But the minute you start managing the colony, then it's a different situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how
Yeah,
you
so
treat your
here, no,
bees.
we don't have the strict laws, but obviously I still have a responsibility as a person that works with bees. So yes, every following year, then I made sure that any swarm that come off them logs, I would catch them. I would
Yeah.
use them either for my own purposes or I would pass them on to other people. And obviously that then, because it went so quickly, like after one season of 10 colonies, the following year I had something nearly 30 colonies. And then I start toying with the idea, so like, oh, why don't I get to a situation where I have like almost like a bit of like sustainability within these colonies of bees? I catch the swarms and I pass them on to local people that are beekeepers and obviously want to have good stock. So I just kept doing that, and now I'm over 250 colonies I maintain. And every year I go in, I catch the swarms, or now I'll have them in certain areas where beekeepers, they contact me and say, oh, do you have any good bees? I would just give them the location of the hive. And I said, well, why didn't you go up there and put out a little box and you catch those bees and work with those? And it's working very well at the moment. Yeah, so I'm spreading them all over the local area here.
So when you say you maintain the bees, Mick, what does that involve?
Initially I just did 2 inspections a year. I would come in springtime, like I would have cameras, like endoscope cameras, where I'd go in, make sure the colony's healthy, check everything's fine, and then obviously take records of that. And then I do the same again in autumn time, just for my personal information. But then, yes, over time, obviously, because it grew so rapidly, other people became aware of what I was doing. And what is it now? And that's now 3 years ago. What are we? 3 years ago, yes. I got involved then with a research project down in the university in Galway, where they are starting to look at free living colonies. At the moment, like they're not saying that they're wild bees, like because they just don't know yet. Because see, there's always like a bit of controversy, like, oh, we have wild bees, but only when you really start testing those bees and finding out what kind of genetics you got, you can only determine then if they were originally wild or were they escapees, like from conventional beehives and ended up in the
Wow.
wild.
So would they call those bees feral bees or?
Yeah, well, yeah. If they're escapees, like in the
Yeah.
beekeeping world, they would be called feral bees. Like, yes.
Mm.
So because at the moment we haven't enough data yet on it, that's why they're called free living bees.
Okay, and that's why you're doing all the work you're doing, stopping all the other bees coming in while you're monitoring the bees that are out there in your
Exactly.
120 square. Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
So with that research team now, we started off and we sampled, I think it's 100 colonies now, where we took 30 bees, 30 foraging bees, like coming back with pollen, to make sure like they obviously belong to that nest. And they got genetically analyzed. So from that now I have like a perfect picture of those 100 colonies, what I've got. So
That's amazing.
from the Holland colonies, I have 72 colonies that are pure AMM, so Apis mellifera mellifera.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then I have a 28% where I have some hybridization going on.
yeah.
And obviously, we want to see like what the impact is of those hybridized bees on the native stock.
Of course. Yeah.
Because what there is kind of hearsay, like obviously what our AMM, our native Irish honeybee, like they're much more adapted to our local environment. The bees can fly like at 8-9 degrees, no problem. Even if it's raining, they'll be still out foraging as well. Like, and anything that is not native from here, like obviously struggles with that, and that over time then causes stress within the colony, and disease will start to build up over time.
Am I
So obviously
correct?
they're trying to establish that now. Is this through, like this saying, like, right, that, and obviously this is just going to be like a long-term monitoring where we're going to have to watch them, say, for 5-10 years, and obviously see how those two groups are going to do.
Yeah. Mick, are the AMM bees that you're talking about, are they the really black bees? What do they look like?
Yeah, they're really little black. Let's see. Can I, as we're talking, like, I'll see if we can bring up a picture of it.
Would love to see one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was trying to hope, because I was trying to rig it up. So I actually have a camera on one of the hives here at the moment, which obviously would be really good to show you.
Yeah.
But I'm not really technically minded, or not enough anyway, to set that up, and obviously to be able to share the screen, unfortunately.
In lieu of a camera, could you take us through like a virtual talking tour of one of your log hives? So if I was a beekeeper heading out with you to go and do some monitoring, and we got to one of your hives, we opened it up, what would we see? What could we expect to see?
Right, so first probably better talk a bit about the hives themselves, I would say. I make different types, but obviously the two ideal ones that I make, they are going up in trees. Because obviously that's what I find anyway, what the bees prefer themselves. So they're about 3 foot in length, with a diameter of a log, probably what we were talking, 22-24 inches. And then initially I started off with a cavity of about 10-11 inches wide.
And you make the cavity in the log?
Yeah. Maybe what we should do is, in a minute, I should just walk out and show you.
I think that would be a great idea. If you can show us, we would love to see it. But we want to see a picture of AMM as well, though, if you've got a picture there. Vapus mellifera mellifera.
We'll be able to then just share the screen, won't I?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Why not? Make it a bit more interesting. But yeah, so the log, we're talking, initially then, yeah, it's about 11 inches of a
Oh, we're losing you, Mick.
But I found over time, the years I've been working with it, I'm actually reducing. Are you?
Yeah.
Are you losing me, is it? Or
a little bit, we were, yeah. We've just got you back now. Maybe
it should be fine here, I think.
Okay.
Maybe it's just a little glitch, is it?
Yeah, it's okay now. Yeah.
All right, let's see. So there's one. I'll see how far I can go, yes, and see if you can still catch me.
Okay. Yep.
You can see this okay?
We can see that. It's coming through yeah.
Oh, it's coming through in bits, is it?
Oh, we can see it. We can see the entrance underneath the roof.
Yeah, but can you hear me as well, is it? Or is the signal bad?
No, it's okay. We can see.
Right, so actually there, look. This one is empty at the moment. So I'm waiting for a colony of bees to move into here now, look. You have little scout bees that are actually coming at the moment. They're checking it out. but the weather is not really great. It's too windy and rainy, so probably not going to happen today. Would have been ideal, like if we had a nice swarm today, landing as we're talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, so timber wise, it doesn't really matter. I work with what's local, so I only work with trees that have fallen naturally or have died naturally. Yeah, here's your little bees. Let's see. They're actually trying to check it out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There you go. That's a little AMM bee there. Yeah, so I work with only naturally dead timber. And then what I do is from the back, because obviously where possible, as you see, this is a natural opening that was in the tree already. And I obviously use that then just to make a little entrance there. But obviously to hollow it out, well, here you actually can't see it at the moment. Like behind it, there's like a slit door all the way down. And then obviously I cut that out with a V shape. So I come in at an angle first. I make a cut this way and then cut it all the way down and do the same, but I come then on a, say, 45-degree angle and cut it here. And then a little bit on the top and the bottom. What actually happens, you end up with like a giant wedge that comes out of it. And then obviously I go in with hand tools then and just keep cleaning it out. So big chisels and adzes. I just keep working away like until I have the required volume. And to finish it off, then I make nice thatch roofs. Just to finish them up, obviously to make sure that the top of the log is completely waterproof. It's protected because obviously that will lengthen the lifespan of the log. I have no ingress of water at all. So they go up, and obviously they're a real nice feature as well.
Yeah.
So especially when I put them out like into people's lands, like obviously they're kind of like a talking point as well. So they're very aesthetically pleasing. But if they're in trees, like I would just have a log and a little cap on top of it. Make sure that it's protected. And I just literally strap them up in the tree like with ratchet straps. And bees would work away themselves. But yeah, for inspection, obviously, you just take this cover off. It's just held like with a bit of wire here at the moment. I can pop that off, like, and then I actually can take out the door. And what I would see in a colony that's fully established, you would have from the top about 30-inch pieces of comb all the way down vertically. And you're normally on average in between 6 and 7 of them, those vertically all the way down. So yeah, so that's kind of your internal, and what you'll find straight away around your entrance, it'll be completely glued with propolis. Because obviously I have made an artificial gap there. So you can see, if I can show you there, like you'll see there from the previous nest, that's all propolis there. So they're completely sealed inside. So it's very difficult to get it out, but if you're doing it on a nice warm day, the propolis is nice and soft, and you're able to take it off then. If you try that on a cold day, it's nearly impossible to do it.
So Mick, they must be pretty heavy as well once they get full of bees and you're lifting them up and tying them to trees.
A log like this, we're talking about 80 kilos. Empty.
Yeah.
I actually did it once. I weighed one sheet in the wintertime. The colony unfortunately perished, and I weighted the sheet, and one sheet 3 foot long was 9 kilos in each. So you could have like an additional 60, 70 kilos on top of it in the wintertime. Yeah.
Unreal.
There's a bit of weight in it, for definite. But yeah, no, it's hey, working away that way. What I'll do is, let's see, how do we turn this around again? There we go.
Yeah.
I'll be able to show you a wee active one here, just around the back. I actually have it sitting on top of the roof of the house.
How long's it been there for?
It's been there now 4 years,
Great.
and it's absolutely flat out.
So Mick, at the moment, sorry,
Yeah,
you
go
go.
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, at the moment, is most of your work happening in Ireland? Are you doing this in any other country?
I kind of do it wherever I get asked to go. It's the same the time I was asked to go to Australia with the big fires, after the big fires.
Yeah.
I get requests to go to different locations. So there in the start of April, like I was asked to go to the UK
Yep.
to give lots of talks over there, have a look at other different locations, and obviously learn myself as well. Like I was lucky enough to go to a very old estate where they had trees that were over 1,000 years old,
Oh,
which was phenomenal, absolutely
wow.
phenomenal. But yeah,
Yeah.
here's a nice bit of this is what free living bees do, like in with proper Irish weather. As you can see, our weather is not very great at the moment, but this is what they do. So they do a lot of festooning at the entrance.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very interesting. Like, so you can see they have a wee camera set up, where I can just observe them 24 hours a day, and trying to gather some information from that, like, just to see what to do in the particular times of the day, if there's any new things that we didn't know about, like, because I don't know if you can see. So what to do now? They're looking like they're completely sitting still. I'll get a bit closer here now. But they're actually working on the propolis at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
You see them all working away there, like they're constantly making that propolis layer, that orangey kind of color. They're making it movable all the time, so it stays active. You have a few there coming back, but yeah, they're just working away like constantly.
I've also just had a comment from one of our guests in here as well, Mick, saying, hello, here in Morocco, log hives are the traditional common form made from palm tree trunks. This is popular in the desert
Yes.
where the temperatures go up to 40 degrees. Thanks, Amanda. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go all over the world, and obviously bees will choose different locations. We're now in this situation, and obviously the reason I started using the log hives is because the bees' habitat is disappearing in Ireland. They've been eradicating the forests for a long, long time, and we're now at the point where we only have about 0.5% of tree cover left of native Irish trees in the country.
So part
The
of your
rest is all.
rewilding bees then is also about rewilding nature and replanting trees and native species, I'd imagine.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, that's where my background comes back into it again. My forestry side. So yes, obviously, I try to educate people as much as I can. When they start talking about bees and trees and whatever, I try to improve it, and teach them about maybe they should maybe plant a few trees as well. Like, I want to get to a point as well where we can start doing proper surveys. Say when you have like a big piece of land somewhere, say 1,000 acres or something, where we could then actually come in first, and it won't be just me, like it'll be other people's in the field as well, where we actually go on to assess the land and to see how many colonies of bees it could maybe sustain. And obviously from that point, then obviously you do like an initial inventory like of the land, and then you could advise the person accordingly. Where you would say like, right, okay, you have X, Y, and Z. This is going to produce X amount of nectar. With that, obviously, we transform that and say, right, you could have maybe 1, 2 colonies on the property.
What is the main nectar producing plant in Ireland?
We have a few. at this time of the year, we're talking clover and bramble.
Mm.
They're big ones. So they've just started now. Like the clover has started now for the last 2 weeks, and the bramble is just about to kick off.
Mm.
And obviously, our management of hedgerows like isn't really that good anymore. Like so, they've been completely taken over by bramble. So we would have masses and masses of it. Earlier on in the year, you would have a lot of willow, and obviously then the tree species as well. Like sycamore would be good as well. And then we have a real big one then more later in the summer, which is obviously the heather.
Yes.
And then after that, you have another real big one, which is ivy.
Yeah, we get ivy here as well. Yeah, end of season. Mick, before I hand the floor over to other people, I'm really interested in terms of your log hives, because I had a good look at your webpage and I saw the different ones that you design and make. And if anybody hasn't been onto Boom Trees Bees page, please do have a look. I'm interested in the evolution of those hives and why you decided to make them that particular way.
Okay, so originally I started off with just the one for in the tree, and so I hauled out the logs, and then I came across a few people like in Eastern Europe where it's still like a very old tradition, especially Poland and Latvia and those kind of areas. And they had a slightly different design where they had those ones here at the front with the side entrance in it. So I made a couple of those, and obviously I started putting them up. And obviously I can see the reason why they had them on the ground, because obviously just for management purposes. Because I was actually putting those up in the trees, trying to get up there with ladders and things, and it makes it slightly more tricky to do an inspection in a hive. So yes, those two I make like, and then people started to inquire, like, and I would go out to sites where I was going to assess the land, like, and there might be no trees available at all. They literally had young saplings, maybe 5, 6 years old, and there's no way like a 80 kilo or 90 kilo log is going to hang in that little sapling because of the snap off. So from there, then I started making the ones on stilts. So they're like big giant tripods that I attached onto the bottom of the leg, or onto the log, and that elevates the log up then about 2 to 2.5 meters, depending on the legs that I put on. So that's the third one, and then at a certain point, like I got a lot of interest, like from schools. So there were a lot of work like in schools as well, where I educate. So I actually made like a horizontal format where I actually turned the log sideways, and I put in a glass inspection door like on the back of it. So obviously the kids could come like, and we can open like the solid slab of wood and then take that away, like, and the bees, or the kids could just watch the colonies just work away on the inside, just for educational purposes. And then what else? Yes, the one that I make then for people that are already in beekeeping, but it requires very big logs. So I make one I call like a transfer log hive, where you could have a colony that's in a framed hive, and you can transfer that straight across into the log, frames and all.
Amazing. And then
But it requires a log like we're talking over a meter in diameter.
That's huge.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's big.
But that's kind of the evolution of all the different types that I'm making. Yes, and the reasons behind it. But mainly what people are choosing is the ones from the trees and the elevated ones.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Mick, for sharing that with us. And I think Kristen shared the webpage for people to have a look and connect with Mick as well. Mick, before I hand over to the floor, there's some questions that I ask all of our guests before we get questions from everybody else. What's your best advice for happy bees? And I think I might know the answer to this, but best advice.
Happy bees.
Yeah.
As little as much disturbance as possible.
Yeah.
And proper housing.
Best
Yeah.
advice for new beekeepers.
Best advice for new beekeepers. Make sure that you get a proper understanding of the life of bees. So I know like beekeeping courses, yes, it's one thing, but do a proper study, like even yourself, if it's outside the course, on the natural life of bees.
Yeah.
And obviously then that information, you can transfer that then into your beekeeping practices. Because obviously what we see in a box hive is an artificial situation. It's not what the bees want, it's what the beekeepers wants to see, unfortunately.
Yeah, beekeepers can be bees' worst enemies sometimes.
Yeah.
Best bee-friendly plant.
Ooh, let's briefly the plant. Anything that produces propolis, I think. So the aspen is very good. Aspen tree, like so, Populus tremulus.
Yeah.
Any of the laurels, very good for resin production. Any of the pines, Scott pines like Pinus sylvestris, very good. Um, I think propolis is going to be one of those keys. It's not even the forage. If I would be looking at say just plants here in Ireland, one of the best nutritional plant like for bees would be gorse. It's like a wind bush.
Yeah, we have that here. It's introduced to Australia, but we have that here. Yeah.
So anyone that has it in the area, I know they're seen as a pest, but it's very nutritious. The pollen from it is really good for the bees. So you get really healthy bees from that.
I have heard that. And they flower early spring too, end of winter, early spring here in Tasmania.
We have a situation here where they flower throughout the whole year.
That's great. Good. Now, your favorite honey. Second last question.
My favorite honey. Oh, probably ivy.
What does it taste like?
Um, do you ever go to a pharmacy?
Yes.
When you walk in the door, you get that medicinal smell as you walk into the door?
Yep.
Well, that's what it smells like, and that's what it tastes like when you're opening the jar. Yes.
There you go.
I see. I don't. Yeah, I get some honey. Actually, there's one that I came across accidentally the other day, where I was looking at some bees and they had a big block of braze comb built, and this is actually blackthorn.
Oh, wow.
So it's one of the few times, very rare times, that I would actually see it, because this is probably the first time that I actually harvested blackthorn. But I don't know if you have blackthorn over there, is Prunus spinosa.
It's so it's a kind of plum. Prunus? Is it a
No, it's the
prunus?
same kind of. It's the same. Is it spinosa? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. But a big, massive spikes in it, and you get like little berries, sloes we call them, on it.
Oh, slowberry.
Like
Yes, we do get slowberries here. Of course we do. Yeah. Yes.
yeah.
But they're
But
not native. Yeah.
when I crushed the comb on it, I thought actually the honey was gone off, because it was
Oh,
just like water running out of it.
yeah.
And I'm going like, oh well, that's not any good. But I said, sure, it was perfectly capped and everything. So they said, so I actually looked it up, because I never came across it. I looked it up and it said like, oh yes, when you have slow honey from blackthorn, it is really watery.
Wow. And
I
what does it
I
taste
jarred it
like?
up like, and it's absolutely perfect. Yeah.
What's it taste like?
What does it taste like? Have you ever tasted slow gin?
Yes.
That's
Okay.
that fruity. That
Yep.
fruity. Yeah. There you go.
Lovely. Thank you. Um,
Obviously not the gin part,
don't get drunk on it.
but
Um, Mick, favorite beekeeping hack?
favorite beekeeping hack.
Hmm.
Always talk to your bees.
Yeah.
Always. anytime you approach a colony, you talk to them before you arrive at the hive, or even think about opening it. You talk to them first. You make sure you tune in with them. Observe for at least 5 minutes, because what you see on the outside will tell you straight away what's happening on the inside if you have a reasonable, like a basic level knowledge. And you'll be able to tell certain behavior, what automatically tells you this is not the day for you to go in there. Yes. So
very good advice.
Tune in with bees. Yes.
Very good advice. Thank you, Mick. Now, if anybody here wanted to reach out to you after today, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, I tried to do my best to be on as many platforms as possible, but I'm getting to the point where I had to get my daughter now to help me out. So she's looking after all the Instagram and Facebook stuff. But emails, just boomtreebees@gmail.com.
Right.
You can leave messages on the Facebook, Instagram.
Right.
No problem at all. And I think if you go on the website, you can even just ring me if you want as well. Like if you really want some pressing question or something that needs to be answered straight away.
Thank you, Mick. So I'm going to open up the floor to questions. So please feel free to unmute yourself. To get the question started, Charlotte has asked, you mentioned the extra large log hive that you made to transfer frames into. I've been thinking of making something similar. Was yours oriented horizontally or vertically? Is there somewhere I can see a photo of the one that you made? Thank you.
Yeah, so there's pictures on the website of the transfer log hive. If you go, where was it? I think it's on the page with all the different types of log hive. There's a couple of pictures of the transfer one. But it's a vertical format, obviously, because I have big issues like with the way the conventional hives are, because it's segmented, and obviously in a natural situation, you won't have that. It's all continuous. It's all continuous comb. And obviously that reduces obviously any vibration, any movement in the hive with the loose sections in it. You get lots of vibration, and the bees absolutely hate it. You probably all know yourself, like the minute you stick it in a brand new frame, first thing the bees will try to do is like to stick it down. Yeah. Because they're so in tune, like what goes on, like so they'd be walking over the comb, and they want to be able to feel what goes on the top and one at the bottom as well. They'll be able to get that through vibrations. If you have segmentation in it, that's complete loss of communication straight away. You'll have one section here and then the new one starting below it. End of communication, like so the bees that are on the top, they might get certain amount of information, but if there was an intruder trying to get in, and they walking on the comb or something, like the bees on the top would know straight away before even any of the other bees would raise the alarm with pheromones. So yes, a vertical format, and where I literally make the top, and I normally go with about 8 frames. So if you have like a standard hive, I don't know, a day about 10 or 11 frames of bees.
8, 10, yeah.
Right. So from all the observations I've seen, like all the wild colonies over here, maximum on 8 combs. So I make the cavities then 8 combs wide as well. But obviously the top section, it's a rectangular shape to be able to allow those frames to sit in. But then what I do, then I funnel it down. So you start off like with a perfect rectangle block, and I funnel it down then into a more circular cylinder then at the bottom.
Yeah.
So after you just hang those frames in it, what the bees will do, they'll just draw big teardrops then below it, and then they can fill out. Yeah. Thank
you, Charlotte, for that question. I think Kristen's also provided an image in the chat, so if people want to have a look at that, they can. Are there any more questions for Mick from the floor? Amanda?
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry,
Yeah.
Yeah, great. It's great to see this form of beekeeping. I've certainly come across it a lot here in Morocco. In the south, they use, as I said in the thing, they use the the vertical, I've got a lot of images I can't get up, but of palm trees hollowed out. They're on little stumps about 1 meter high. The other the most common hive here are woven cylinders. They're about 1 meter long and maybe 20 to 25 centimeters wide. And these are used not just to house bees, but for honey collection. And because Morocco is an extraordinary honey producer, these hives, so they're similar in some ways. They're a sort of simulated log, but in none of these are any frames used. They are completely natural. There is a square box similar to the national hive of the UK that they do use here, but most of them are used in these cylinders. And I've taken out a lot of comb from these, and of course they form the circular spiral comb going right the way through, whether they're vertical or horizontal. But no frames at all, because their beekeeping is really, really natural here. No frames, nothing like that. So yet all the honey is harvested from the big cylinders. And they're plugged up. They cut up palm trees and put those as a door and drill a tiny little hole, and they put it all together with mud so that the bees can't get in and out of the end of the cylinder. Then the whole cylinder is covered in mud and the bees go in and out from there. But no frames at all, even for honey production. The whole thing, they just take the combs out. And here in the market, the most common form of getting honey is comb. You buy comb more than you buy pressed out. So I'm really loving what you're doing. And it's a great project. I'm from Ireland. And so it's great to see. I've had a lot of look at ancient beekeeping practices in Ireland. And it's great to see this sort of more traditional form that as you know, in the monasteries of Ireland, this was the traditional way of doing it with the logs. But here it's similar, but never with frames. It's just the cylinders here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's only the transfer log hive that I would have the frames in. Everything else is just natural comb.
Yeah.
Very interesting. On those woven baskets, is there a segregation in between the front, where the actual brood nest is, in the back?
No.
Because I always wondered if the comb is aligned with the entrance, or is it at a 90-degree angle of those? I've been watching them for ages, but never could see it. But I think there's always, where you have the front of the nest, it runs in line with the entrance, and then all of a sudden they start, because it's all nice, perfect circles.
Yes.
That they will have in the back of them, and that's how they harvest them. They just cut each disc out.
Yes, that's right. That's what they do. So the circles, the spirals go all the way through the cylinder, and they just take out a few. I mean, it's a bit sort of, compared to, perhaps the American system, like a Landstroth system or a UK system, it's a lot more random in a way. And a lot of the comb does have brood and brood food and all sorts of things in it. But they will just take out the honey at the back. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good, very interesting. You'll have to send me your pictures and all day, like when you're opening one up.
Yeah, sure, I will do. Yeah, I'd love to come and visit your things in Ireland as well. That sounds great. Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Amanda. Anyone else? Any other questions for Mick? You love your garden too, Mick. There you go, Mick. You got some compliments for your garden. Love your garden.
I think so. It's only the start. Whenever you get a chance, I try to do a bit of work in it, but it's not bad now. I've got about 1 acre, and it's more like a woodlandy kind of feel I'm trying to create.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Mick. Well, if there's no other questions, I would just like to thank Mick again for joining us today. And I think we may also have to have a conversation with you, Amanda, down the track because it sounds interesting what you're doing in Morocco. But today's conversation has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you to everyone for your questions from the floor. And as Mick has said to you, he's open for you to contact him and to reach out at any time. So thank you, Mick.
Yeah, and if he's want, like at some point, if there is like local beekeeping groups or something, like I know I'm involved in one as well in Australia where I'm on the wee WhatsApp group for any advice. You can just add me onto it, and then if there's any questions, then I can answer them for you, so I can help you out that way.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mick.
Okay, dokies. Nice talking to you.
And see you soon.
Okay, right, bye-bye.